I mean, if this doesn't show how great of a writer that Suzanne Collins is, I don't know what will. I was doing my reread of chapter 5, the chariot scene from the Hunger Games, for my virtual book club. I just could not stop comparing Katniss and Peeta's experience in the Parade of Tributes to Hamish's experience in his parade in Sunrise on the Reaping. Parallel that I noticed is that on page 62, Hamish is standing in line and his clothes, as well as the other tributes, their clothes are being cut off, and later we find that they go to the incinerator and are burned. He says that it hurts watching them slice through Ma's careful stitches. I remember her painstakingly laying out those handkerchiefs to make every inch of material count, and now it sits in shreds at my feet. So he's homesick, missing his mother, thinking of his mother, and the clothing that he wears has an emotional attachment to Ma. This is very similar to Katniss. On page 63, she says that my fingers stroke the silky braids my mother so carefully arranged. My mother, I left her blue dress and shoes on the floor of my train car, never thinking about retrieving them, of trying to hold on to a piece of her, of home, and now I wish I had. So again, she's homesick, she's missing her mother, and she's taking these clothing items and thinking back to how important they are to her mom. Both of their mothers either painstakingly made or brought and are attached to these items of clothing that the tributes then have to discard as they are transforming into something more appropriate for the Capitol. I like that both of them end up on the floor as well. Hamish's shirt ends up in shreds at his feet, and Katniss's is left on the floor of the train car. Such a good parallel. Katniss is transported to the Remake Center, where they effectively remake her. They're prepping her for these games, and they are removing her hair. In Sunrise on the Reaping, they're doing something similar with Hamish and the other tributes. Hamish is taken to what he calls the Tribute Center. It's much more run down than the Remake Center, but it's been 25 years by the time we get to Katniss's games, and there's many parts of the games that differ. Page 65 of Sunrise on the Reaping, Hamish says that the prep team shaves off all my visible body hair with electric razors. I don't have much facial hair, but they decided to take that off as well, and I feel like a skinned squirrel, raw and exposed. On page 61 of the Hunger Games, Katniss says that they are ridding her of body hair as well. My legs, my arms, my torso, my underarms, and parts of my eyebrows have been stripped off, leaving me like a plucked bird ready for roasting. So they're both equating their situation to an animal. Hamish says a squirrel, which later becomes very telling with the situation with Ampert, and Katniss says a plucked bird, which is so perfect for her as she transforms into the Mockingjay. The next parallel is actually a large difference. So Hamish is left with Magno as his stylist, and this is a guy who's been assigned the District 12 tributes for as long as Hamish can remember. And the guy doesn't like them, he doesn't like his job, he doesn't take it seriously, and ultimately he gives them the same crappy coal miner overalls in an array of sizes. So he's supposed to have a shining new look for the Quarter Quell and does not provide. In contrast, Katniss is gifted, fortunately, with such a brilliant stylist in Cinna. Katniss actually says to him, "You're new, aren't you?" And then says, "So they gave you District 12. And then it says, "Newcomers generally end up with us, the least desirable district." I asked for District 12, he says, without further explanation. So there is a very good juxtaposition there because Cinna actually wants the underdogs. He wants District 12. And the way that Suzanne Collins uses the word newcomers, but then goes back when writing Sunrise on the Reaping and establishes that to have a positive connotation is absolutely brilliant. The next parallel I note is on page 67 of the Hunger Games. So Katniss is talking about how she is being dolled up for the Parade of Victors. And she says that my hair has been brushed out and then braided down my back in my usual style. So she has a braid. And when Hamish, at the end of chapter 5, the beginning of chapter 6, is holding Luella, Luella actually has her hair in her 2 signature braids. So both of the sweethearts have braided hair for the parade. So now let's talk costumes. Katniss and Peeta are put in a simple black unitard that covers them from ankle to neck, shiny leather boots that lace up to their knees, and then they have a cape on as well. They also are wearing a headdress. Mitch and the rest of the District 12 tributes are wearing the same costume they've seen on the District 12 tributes for as long as Hamish can remember. He climbs into a pair of smelly black miner overalls, held together with safety pins. He straps on a cheap plastic coal miner hat without complaint. So on page 69 of the Hunger Games, Katniss is going through and describing the other chariots. It says that the District 1 chariot is being pulled by snow white horses. I think that's odd because Snow White helps me associate those horses and that district, which is a favorite, along with the president. But even better is how this is repeated in Sunrise on the Reaping. Their chariot, glimmering gold, is also drawn by snow white horses. Perfection, Suzanne Collins, perfection. Here's the line that really got this whole thing started for me. Katniss, in her games, is frozen when she catches sight on a large television screen because she's floored by how breathtaking she and Peeta look. The crowd goes nuts. They're blowing her kisses. They're throwing her roses, which has the exact opposite happen to him. He looks up at one of the giant screens above the packed stands lining the avenue and sees himself in his crappy costume hunched over the railing and thinks, long shot. He forces himself to stand up straight. So Katniss is holding her head high. She's holding on to Peeta's hand. She is feeling so much more confident in this moment. She starts to play off with the crowd, and she thinks that maybe I could actually do this. Maybe I'm not a long shot. Haymitch has the opposite. He says that the crowd is drunk and people start to chuck bottles and trash at them. What a good juxtaposition. Instead of roses and kisses, he gets bottles and trash. Some naked woman makes lewd gestures to him. People are vomiting in the street. Such a different and disgusting contrast. But it starts out the same by both of them looking to those screens. Peeta and Katniss have been instructed to hold hands, and she starts to let go. Peeta actually says, no, don't let go of me. Please, I might fall off of this thing. And that was so triggering when I read this. When the axle of the District 6 chariot starts shredding the District 12 chariot, Haymitch lunges for Luella, hoping to brace her, and she reaches for him just as the wheel collapses, and then they're catapulted into the air. After Luella is unalived, Haymitch picks her up, and he says that he has lost his cheesy imitation coal miner hat in the accident, and he's rid of the headgear. So he and Luella's outfits have become merely neutral, black, and unforgettable. And I love how that ties back into what Katniss and Peeta are wearing. Just that unitard. If it's not lit on fire, it's just simple and basic and black.